Hello friends, welcome to CEC live lectures. I am Dr. Pavitra Bharadwaj and I teach computer science in a prestigious college at the University of Delhi. So we will be continuing with our series on computer networks, and today's lecture is going to be the 11th lecture in the series. And as you know, we have touched a large number of topics related to computer networks in these lectures, which you can always go and see. And today we are going to talk about a different domain within the computer networks, and specifically we are going to talk about some protocols today. So we will be talking about some standard client server protocols which are commonly used in case of networks and in case of communication, internet and other applications. So we are going to talk about all these protocols in this and the following lectures that we are going to take up. So when we talk about protocols, so initially we had discussed that for any network, one of the major components, of course you have the sender, the receiver, the message and the media, but another very important component of any communication system is the protocol. So basically what is protocol? Protocol is nothing but a set of rules, a set of standards which both the sender and the receiver of the communication on a network agree, right? So both sender and receiver, they agree on a set of rules, on a set of policies, on a set of procedures. Both will follow those, and under those rules only the communication is going to take place. So therefore these are known as standard client server protocols, because these are commonly used in all client server type of applications. So the first protocol, or the first important service which we see here, is actually the World Wide Web and the HTTP protocol. So we all know that what is World Wide Web, or www that we say. So it is nothing but it is a collection of web pages. Okay, and these web pages, they have two main criteria. One, that these web pages are distributed. Okay, so they are distributed means that all over the world these web pages and related documents are available, and these are linked to each other. So when we say distribution, so because of this distribution, this will allow the growth of the web, because each server of the world can add new pages to the repository, and once a new page is added to the repository, then the server will announce it to the internet users that a new page has been added. So therefore there are thousands of web servers across the globe, but this distribution will make the same page available across the server, and therefore there will be no problem of overloading of web pages. Another important aspect of the World Wide Web is that there is linking of the pages. So every page is linked, or it can be referred to by another web page, and this web page, it could be stored somewhere else in the world. So therefore what we are talking about is hyperlinking, that is linking between the different pages. And this was earlier, we used to say that it was hypertext, because only the text used to work as link, but now this is known as hypermedia, because all types of media, whether it is text, audio, video, graphics, animation, any of these it can work as a link to another page. So therefore two main attributes which make World Wide Web so strong is that distribution and linking. Okay, now if you look at the architecture of the World Wide Web, or how it is created, or how it is organized. So basically this is a distributed client server service. And why we say client server? Because the client will access the services of a server using an application called the browser. So the service provided is distributed over many locations, and these locations are known as sites, right? And each site, or what you call as a website, it will hold one or more web pages, and each web page it will be having links to other web pages within the same site, or it could be outside the site, or maybe to some other sites. So this is basically a distributed client server service, because the websites can be, the web pages can be located anywhere on any of the servers. So in other words, we can say that a web page can be a simple web page, or it can be a composite web page. A simple web page means that it has no links to other web pages, whereas a composite web page, of course, will have links to other web page. And every web page is actually a file, and therefore it has a unique name and it has an address on the World Wide Web. Okay, so if you look at this diagram, it clearly shows that how client server architecture works on the World Wide Web. So the client will send a request for a particular file or a document, and then that file, if it is available on the same site, it is fetched. If the requested file is there is a link on which is going, or which is taking to a file which is referencing a file on another site, then the request through the client will go to the other site and response will come from that. So basically this is a request response communication which is happening. So the client will send a request to the server or to the site, and the site will respond by giving the desired web page to the client. So therefore that is what we are saying, that a web page, either it could be a simple web page which will have no links, or it can be a complex web page which can further have links. So if we look at web client, now what is a client? Basically a client, or a web client or a browser is an application program which is available through which the users can access the World Wide Web. So there are a variety of vendors which offer commercial browsers, and these browsers, they can interpret and display a web page. So browser usually it consists of three parts, basically a controller, the client protocols, and interpreter. So each of these parts it has got its specific role to play. We all know there are number of browsers, every day we see, like Google Chrome is there, Firefox is there, Safari is there, Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge. There are n number of browsers which are available, but mostly all browsers, they will have a controller, client protocols, and interpreter. So if we look at this, so the control, because the user will use any of the input media, say a keyboard or a mouse, and through which the command is given to the controller. Then on the browser you can see there are some protocols like HTTP, FTP, SSH, SMTP. What are these? These are the protocols which are used by the various web pages for the transfer of information, and there are interpreters like Java interpreter or JavaScript or HTML interpreter which makes the content available, which makes the content readable by the servers or by the client application or by the the output devices. So controller basically will receive the input from the keyboard or mouse, and it will use the client program to access the document, whatever document it is. Now once the document has been accessed, then the controller will use one of the interpreters to display the document on the screen. So basically what is an interpreter doing? Interpreter is translating what is contained in the document so that it can be displayed on the screen. And then client protocols, either of the protocols like HTTP, FTP, SMTP, etc. So the interpreter can be an HTML, Java or JavaScript, and there are a wide range of browsers which are available, and that the browsers enable the users to see the content, to see the web pages in the proper way on the screen. Now next thing which we need to understand when we are talking about client server application, particularly in the light of the World Wide Web, is the web server. So a web page is basically stored at a computer, at a at a machine called the server, and since it's a web page, so therefore this is known as a web server. So whenever a server gets a request from the client, the corresponding document is sent by the server to the specific client. So to improve efficiency, servers normally store requested files in a cache memory. Okay, because cache memory means it's a very high speed storage area within the computer or within the web server, and whatever pages are accessed recently, they are kept in the cache, because cache memory is faster than the primary memory. So therefore, by having cache memory, the speed or the response time of the server will be highly improved. Besides cache, the servers, they also have other mechanisms like multi-threading and multi-processing, which allow them to accept and to process different requests, multiple requests at the same time. So a server can also have this kind of facility, because it can answer more than one request. So some of the web servers which are very popularly used are Apache server, then you have the Microsoft Internet Information, which is commonly known as the IIS Internet Information Server. So these are two very popular servers which are configured and which are used very commonly in case of World Wide Web. Then the next important thing when we talk about the World Wide Web is the Uniform Resource Locator. Now when I am saying that a web page is basically a file, and therefore it is important that every file or every web page is uniquely identified, it is uniquely distinguishable from other web pages. So to define a web page, we basically need three identifiers. First is the host, then you have the port, and then we have the path. So basically, before defining the web page, we have to tell the browser that what client server application we want to use, and this is called the protocol. So basically, all these four together, that is the protocol, the host, the port and the path, together they form the URL, that is a Uniform Resource Locator, which will identify each web page on the World Wide Web uniquely. So protocol basically is the first identifier, and we all use this. Like for example, we write http:// and then we write the name of the website www.xyz.com, right? So this HTTP basically is the protocol, because we have to tell the the service what kind of service we are going to use, right? So other protocols can also be used like FTP, etc., but most commonly in World Wide Web, the protocol which is used is the HTTP protocol. Then we have the host. So basically, host means the name or the identification or the IP address of the computer or the server which we want to access. So IP addresses we've already discussed. They could be in the dotted decimal notation like 1.122.198.64 or any dotted notation, or it could be a domain name, right? Say for example du.ac.in. So anyways, you can identify the domain name either through the IP address or through a domain name. So that will uniquely define the host, right? So protocol, then we have the host. After this we have the port. Now what is a port? Basically it is a 16-bit integer, and it is normally predefined for the client server application. Like for example, HTTP protocol, it is used for accessing the web page and it uses port number 80. Right. So, however, if a different port is used, then the number can be explicitly given. So, basically these are points, where the application connect, right? These are logical points where the application connects. And then finally in the URL, the last part of the URL is the path. So, path basically means the location and the name of the file in the underlying operating system. So, basically, when you are accessing a server, you are accessing a file on the server, it will depend upon the operating system, whether it is a Unix operating system, so that will have its own directory structure, directory names, and different the format of giving the file path will be different. If it is Windows, then it is going to be different. So path basically it's the list of directories from top to bottom and followed by the file name. So the outermost, the topmost in the hierarchy, the folder in the topmost hierarchy comes first, and then the last you have the file name and then the extension of the file. Say for example abc.html or homepage.html. So basically this is the structure, or this is the main architecture of how the web is organized. So we have a web client, we have a web server, and we have the the URL, which is the path of a web page. Now different web documents, web pages or web documents is the same thing. So they can be classified as three types basically. So we can have static documents, we can have dynamic documents, and we can have active documents. So the web pages that we are looking at could be either static, dynamic, or active. So it's important to understand the difference between these three types of web documents. So first type of documents is the static documents. Static, the word itself says that these are fixed content document. So these are created once and they are stored in the server. Now whenever the client will request for a static document, he will get a copy of the documents, right? So content of the file is determined when the file is created, not when it is used, because the file is created once and it is stored, it's saved on the server. If any changes are needed in that file, then those changes are to be done by the designer and another copy of the file has to be stored. Okay, so these contents can not be changed by the user. Client will only access a copy of the document which is present on the server. The user will use a browser to see the document. So we can have different tools can be used for preparing this type of static documents. It could be HTML, it could be XML, XSL, or XHTML. Different languages, different types of web designing tools are used to create static documents. Then we have dynamic documents. So dynamic document is actually created by a web server when a browser requests for the document. When the client is asking for a document, then the document is created. So when a request arrives, then the server will run an application program or a script and create the document. Right. So the server basically it will return the result of the program or script as a response to the browser that requested the document. So because every time a request is received, a fresh document is created. So therefore the content of a dynamic document will vary from request to request, from one request to another request. A very pertinent example of dynamic document is where the user wants to know the time or the date, right? So in this case, when the date is to be or the time is to be retrieved from a server, so every time the client will ask the server, then the server will run a program such as a date program and it will send the result of the program to the client. So this type of document is created when a request is received by running a server side program or by running a different kind of program, and the result of the program, the output of the program is sent to the client, right? So different tools can be used. So earlier it was basically Common Gateway Interface or CGI which was used for dynamic documents, but today JSP is being used very commonly. ASP, which uses Visual Basic for scripting, is used, and Cold Fusion are also, Cold Fusion is another very important tool which is being used, which embeds SQL queries database in the HTML document. So they basically, your front end will remain as the HTML only, the basic designing will be done by HTML, but some other tool will be used which will help dynamic content creation by the server and accepting the result or accepting the response of that dynamically created document. Then the third type of document which is seen is the active document. So for many applications we need a program or a script to be run at the client side. So these documents are known as active documents. For example, we want to run a program which creates animated graphics on the screen, or a program that interacts with the user. So these will be required to run at the client side, right? Because the animation or the interaction is going to take place at the client side. So such documents which require users engagement or interaction with the client, that type of documents are known as active documents. So when a browser will request for an active document, the server will basically send a copy of the document or a script. The document is then run at the client or the browser side. So one way which is very common way of creating active documents is using the Java applet. So basically a Java applet is nothing but a program which is written in Java on the server, and it is compiled and it's ready to be run, and the document is basically in the byte code or the binary format, and then this Java applet, it executes, it is sent by the server to the client and it is executed at the client's end. Another way to use this is Java script, right? So download and run the script at the client side using the JavaScript. So basically three types of documents, each type of document has its own application. Some places only a static document will suffice, at other places we would require more dynamic content. So the pages have to be created on the go, on the client's request, and then we have active documents which are actually created as a result of interaction with the client side. So we will be continuing with other protocols in the following lectures. Till then, thank you.